Good Monday morning, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. Thank you for starting this week off by looking with me at the book of James and his marvelous wisdom, kind of the Proverbs of the New Testament. We'll be in James chapter 4 today, beginning in verse 3 and continuing to look at James' explanation for why we end up falling for temptation. And so, verse 3, James says, "You ask and receive not because you ask amiss, that you may consume it upon your lust." Let's back up and look at verse 2, where we were Saturday, just to refresh your memory. He says, well, let's go back to verse 1. "From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members?" So James first says that we fall into temptation because of our own lust, our own desires. Then he says, "You lust and have not, you kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you have not, because you ask not." We try to accomplish things on our own. We pursue our own desires, our own lust, as he says in verse 1, without consulting God, without asking Him. Then he builds on that in verse 3 with this phrase, "You ask and receive not because you ask amiss." James says that one of the reasons they didn't have what they wanted, which led them to kill, to fight, to war, in verse 2, was because they didn't ask for it. And he says, basically, you've declared war on a friend because you didn't have what you wanted, and you didn't have what you wanted because it was something God may have given you, may have granted, if you had asked. He also makes a point here that he says you ask amiss. Many times it's the way that they ask. We ask with the wrong motives, with the wrong purpose, for our own selfish desires. And so our whole concept of prayer, of asking God, comes into question in this verse. And one of the things, one of the ways we can evaluate that is when we pray, when we are asking God for something. A good question to ask ourselves is, will or how can God's kingdom, God's plan, God's will be advanced if He grants me this request? If God gives me what I'm asking for, will His kingdom grow? Will His kingdom be advanced? Will His plan be carried out? That is a real good, I think, a question, a real good filter for our prayer life. And James is saying that's a real issue for us. We ask wrong. We ask for the wrong things. We ask with the wrong motive. We ask for the wrong purpose. And so we pray through that filter, how will God's kingdom be advanced? How will God be glorified by Him granting me, Him answering my prayer? And I hope you think about that today. That's a real, I think for most of us, that's a real challenge in our prayer life. We do pray often out of selfishness, out of our own desires. But how will God's kingdom be advanced? Those prayers you prayed last night, or those prayers you prayed this morning, will God, or how can God's kingdom be glorified? How will God be glorified if He answers your prayer affirmatively? Think about it. Something to think about every time we pray. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning.